Thank you. Senator Paul.
There have been some discussion about whether the Abbott plant was not closed soon enough, or whether it was closed prematurely, whether it was closed too long. There's no definitive evidence that the children who died, the bacteria came from the formula. That's a question.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know that. And I mean, it's very sad that the children died, but as the investigation has gone on, the unopened samples from the household, which would be part of the same batch, did not have any of the bacteria. The open bottle had bacteria, but coronabacteria can come from the environment when you manufacture it, but it also can come from the home environment. When they do their investigation, I know they go back to the plant and take swabs everywhere. Do they also take swabs in the home environment?
In the home environment, I'd have to check to see whether that happens every time, but if there's suspicion about the home environment, it would.
So I think it would be worth doing that because we want to know where it came from so we can prevent it happening from again. If you have other children in the house or you're having another child, it would be important. It's nobody's fault, but it would be important to know if there was coronabacteria found that matched the strain. But what we do know is what was found in the plant when you do the DNA analysis did not match the bacteria that unfortunately killed the children. On the issue of formula, how is a European formula different than American formula? Why do we prohibit it from coming into the U.S.?
We've never prohibited European formula from coming into the U.S., but we do have requirements that have arisen over time. There are 30 nutrients that need to be in a specified label and specified amount, and 10 that if they're too high are dangerous. So we just need to make sure that the requirements are met.
Are we waiving?
We've been importing, by the way, the American manufacturers that we talk about have plants in Europe and Mexico that have been importing all along.
Are we waiving any of the requirements to try to fix the shortage?
We're not waiving basic nutritional requirements or safety requirements. We're waiving some of the labeling requirements that are time-consuming to get exactly right.
When you say that we don't prohibit it, you're right. There's not a law or an FDA edict saying you can't have it, but there are a lot of restrictions on it that do effectively prohibit it. Some of those are labeling. So we are waiving the labeling things. Do you think it may be a good idea to maybe permanently get rid of some of these labeling requirements that are keeping European or Japanese formula out of our market?
Well, I disagree that that's what's keeping them out of the market, but we'll continue to look at the labeling to make sure it's leading to safety. Remember that an error in mixing up the formula can be devastating to an infant.
Yeah, but I think Europe has those same concerns too, so does Japan. And I think this gets back to the basic question of whether we trust, international standards on things or whether we don't. And I think it is part of it. If you're loosening the labeling requirements now to get more in, then the labeling requirements, obviously, you believe are limiting it. So by loosening them, you're expecting that you'll get more formula. Some of the differences, I think, would be and could be considered a matter of opinion. How much iron is in the formula? I think we have more iron than Europe has. Europe has more omega-3 fatty acids. I don't think their doctors over there consider or there's an outbreak of iron deficiency in Europe because their formula is less. So I would say that they could be honest, expert differences on exactly what formula should hold. Would you agree?
Yes, Dr. Paul. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of global coordination for basically the reason you gave. We're all human beings. The diseases we have don't know borders. And where the requirement is good, we should take it into account. Right. And of course, the availability of cloud computing and internet makes it possible to do this in real time, but we're not there yet.
Right. Well, I would venture to say we are there. I mean, I think that part of what you're going to do is try to evade the rules that have restricted the flow of foreign formula in. It also would serve to have more competition. If you do have a problem, I'm not so sure whether the Abbott plant should have been shut down for so long. But the thing is, if you had more foreign formula flowing in, and I think that there's nothing wrong with the European formula. There's probably nothing wrong with the Japanese. There's probably nothing wrong with the New Zealand. So there does need to be more coordination. I don't think it's like, we got to wait till sometime in the future. I think right now it's completely safe, and people ought to get the choice of where they buy it from. We've proposed legislation that would get rid of tariffs also. There's a 17% tariff on it. I think the agreement between Mexico and Canada and the United States that was signed in the previous administration put an extra tariff on Canadian formula and Mexican formula. So those are economic barriers to it, and we got to look at the whole picture. Closing down Abbott, I think probably too long since there's no proof that the deaths actually were related to Abbott. and sort of, I think, the overreaction in some ways to the link and not really following the science has led to a lot of this. But I think also the economic barriers of tariffs, but also I think the overly zealous regulatory environment as far as what goes into it. Nobody wants dangerous formula, but nobody also believes that the European Union is like, delivering millions of babies in Europe dangerous formula. And so I think there does need to be more international acceptance of things, and I think you're doing some of that. And I commend you for doing it, but you're evading your own regulations right now, which is good, because I think some of your regulations don't make any sense. And so I think we should, by legislation, address, the needs of formula and see whether there's a dispute. I'll bet you we could bring in a whole panel of scientists that agree that the European formula is just as good as ours or better. And it would be a dispute. And there are probably hundreds of papers written back and forth over what the level of iron should be. So I don't think there's any ironclad truth. It's another reason why we shouldn't have anyone dispensing what truth is, because truth is debatable, and people look back and forth and actually have opinions as to what the truth is. And I think we need to be more open-minded as far as this goes. But I do commend you for trying to get outside the regulations to get more formula in. But I think we have to look at whether or not it was an appropriate length of time that Abbott was closed down, given that the evidence does not definitively say that the bacteria came from the plant. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I make two quick points?
Yes.
On that? Number one, for those who argue that onshoring is the solution to all of our problems with our supply chains, this is a classic example of why that's not the case. This was almost all onshored material, and the industry couldn't produce what people needed. The second, on the Abbott plant. Abbott would completely, now that Abbott has taken into account their own failings, I think they would agree completely with us. They're not ready to open. They've known for 3 months since they've been shut down that we were going to go through this court proceeding to gain control of their quality system. They've been working on it all along, and I do think they're doing a good job now. But they had to replace the roofs, replace the floors. They're still not done. And we went over with the CEO day before yesterday the detailed list of hundreds of things that they had to fix. And you just can't open a plant with bacteria growing in it. I mean, would you go in a kitchen next door if there were bacteria growing all over the place and standing water and people tromping through with mud on their feet? Which is essentially what the inspection showed. So I do agree with some of the main points you made, Senator, but I just, on those two, I wanted to make sure my feelings at least were known.
Thank you.